Pop Sensation Air Supply, tonight at 7:30.
Good evening. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Announcement today of another major airline merger, and Ned Potter reports that this one may mean much more bumpy weather for union labor.
Trans World Airlines has agreed to become part of Texas Air Corporation, the giant holding firm that already owns Continental Airlines and New York Air. It is a $793 million deal, creating a firm with more than 300 airplanes and already a bad reputation with labor.
They have a real lack of respect for the unions.
When Texas Air took over the failing Continental Airlines in 1983, it stood its ground during a bitter strike. It filed for bankruptcy and was thus able to escape dealing with the Airline Pilots Association.
The willingness of the court to uphold that bankruptcy strategy suggested that the firm was in a much stronger position again with respect to the union.
Continental's success against the union has taught some lessons to the striking pilots at United, who today were finalizing the tentative agreement they had announced yesterday. They've been forced to agree to lower wages for future pilots, the major demand made by United's chairman, Richard Ferris.
He is the #1 union buster of the nation, right after Frank Lorenzo.
Lorenzo is the head of Texas Air, and observers say that while his style is very different, his toughness was not lost on Ferris.
This company needs a cost-competitive agreement to compete in the hotly competitive airline market.
A lot of that competition will come from TWA, Continental, and New York Air, now that they'll all be co-owned. From such corporate giants, say analysts, labor will have to learn to live with a lot of pressure. Ned Potter, CBS News, Chicago.
The urge to merge spread to the computer industry today. Burroughs and Sperry Corporations, two of the world's largest computer makers, announced the opening of negotiations aimed at a merger, and that could be a $6 billion deal. And if the merger goes through, it would create the world's second largest computer maker, right behind IBM. In spite of the sudden and surprising surge of evidence that Nazi war criminal Joseph Mengele died in Brazil 6 years ago, that country's chief investigator warned today, we still can't say anything with certainty. Mengele's son, Rolf, who broke years of family silence with a claim that his father was dead, had promised to provide detailed information, but has not. CBS News today found that son, and Doug Tunnell reports.
Rolf Mengele has been in hiding in Freiburg, West Germany, since promising to help in the investigation. CBS News got a rare look at him today. With the help of friends, Mengele has avoided photographers almost as if he, too, were a wanted man. There is still no proof of his claim to have visited his father's grave in Brazil 6 years ago. In Sao Paulo today, officials said Joseph Mengele's available dental records are insufficient. They are awaiting more information on both teeth and fingerprints for positive identification. 4 American forensic experts arrived in Sao Paulo today, while in Frankfurt, West Germany, Dr. Richard Helmer prepared to join them. Helmer is not a Nazi hunter, but a scientist, specializing in human skulls and identifying them with video technology. Helmer mixes and matches critical points from the photographs of the living to the remains of the dead. It is a tried and true method used by German police since 1977. But in the Mengele case, the question of photographs is all important. These are the most authentic pictures of Joseph Mengele in existence from his SS file when he was 27 years old. There are doubts about the reliability of all other photographs of the Auschwitz doctor. Until now, Helmer has relied on relatively up-to-date mugshots in his investigations.
Can you say with certainty that the photograph matches the skull?
I hope so.
Much depends on whether Rolf Mengele or others in his family can or will provide a recent photograph.
German law does not require family members to give evidence against their relatives, and so the further cooperation of the Mengeles in this investigation depends almost entirely on their goodwill. Doug Tunnell, CBS News, Frankfurt.
CBS News has confirmed previously sketchy reports filtering out of Afghanistan that the Soviet Union has begun one of its biggest and most effective offensives against rebel fighters. More on this from Tom Fenton in London.
The next Soviet thrust is expected here in Bakhtia province, where for months rebel forces have been laying siege to Soviet border garrisons. The aim is to pin down Soviet soldiers to keep them from cutting the last major rebel supply line. The siege continues day and night. Ammunition is running short. Each round is counted. The rebels fire their weapons sparingly. From time to time, the Soviets return fire. It has become a source of increasing frustration for the rebels that they cannot inflict heavy damage with their antiquated weapons. 3 months ago, President Reagan welcomed one of the key guerrilla leaders to Washington.
One of the brave commanders who lead the Afghan freedom fighters, Abdul Haq. Abdul Haq, we are with you.
A few days ago, back in Afghanistan, Abdul Haq was disappointed by what he saw as the president's failure to follow up on his words.
He said, yes, he is with us, but where is he now?
To show they are still a force, Abdul Haq's guerrillas took American cameraman Kurt Lobeck into the capital of Kabul itself, past the Soviet forts that ring the city, past patrolling tanks that almost discovered them, to within easy camera distance of the large Soviet military headquarters. This was Lobeck's 4th trip with the rebels. He now believes the war has reached a turning point.
I think the outlook is very bleak for the resistance forces. The situation within the country is one of devastation. If their ability to maintain their supply routes is cut off, it does not look good for them at all.
It was spring planting time, but Lobeck found fields uncultivated and farms abandoned. Of the 32 villages he visited, all were in ruins. Only 8 were still inhabited. Flags marked the final resting place of some of those who once lived here. The villages were under constant attack by Soviet planes that struck without warning, dropping flares and cluster bombs. The hills were ablaze hours later. Afghanistan is being systematically depopulated by a Soviet scorched earth policy designed to deprive the guerrillas of the land and people that support them. Tom Fenton, CBS News, London.
I'm there before 6 a.m. in the morning, and I can leave anytime between 4 and 10 o'clock at night.
Do you think you're gonna have a hard time shopping for Dad?
Not at JCPenney. We have a sale that's just for him. Save on all his favorites like famous Levi's and Parfour dress lac for relaxing, colorful Parfour shirts and shorts. Plus a terrific new collection of Fox sportswear. All this and more at the JCPenney Father's Day sale.
JCPenney sure knows how to please the guy.
You're looking smarter than ever, JCPenney.
Thanks to the cake, you can't pinch an inch. Thanks to the cake, you can't pinch an inch on me.
With the help of the 220-calorie Kellogg's Special K breakfast and those big, crispy, low-sugar, high-protein flakes, I can't think of a tastier or better way to start my day.
Thanks to the K, you can't pinch an inch on me.
In California today, parents reacted angrily after a judge threw out hundreds of child molestation charges. The charges came from the McMartin preschool investigation. The judge acted after prosecutors said they were unwilling to make more children testify in court. David Dow reports all that points to the problems in presenting cases alleging sexual abuse of children.
Though it's just a preliminary hearing, it has always seemed a case of immense proportions. Virginia McMartin and 6 teachers facing, by some counts, more than 300 charges of molesting children in the nursery school that Mrs. McMartin founded. Now, the case has some other big numbers. More than 200 of those charges have been thrown out by a judge who insists she is not throwing out the case itself.
But this is hardly fatal to the people's case.
True, some charges remain against all the defendants. True, the prosecutor claims she's got enough evidence to file 50 new charges. But the latest twist has reignited the frustrations of parents of children allegedly abused.
I have a daughter who has massive evidence of being raped and being sodomized. Somebody did it.
And it has reignited the running national debate concerning the rights of children in such cases versus the rights of the accused.
The children aren't ready
for adult questions. They're not ready for an attempt to wear them down with cross-examination. And our system isn't ready to say we ought to treat children differently than adults.
There's a great tendency to side on behalf of the children in these kind of cases. You've got to make sure that the sympathies, the emotional response, really doesn't end up in the balance being made incorrectly.
The judge in the McMartin case began dismissing charges when the prosecution had run out of witnesses. 13 of 41 alleged child victims had testified at that point. The testimony of several others depended on a new law, one allowing them to appear via closed-circuit television without the pressure of facing their alleged abusers. But Judge Bob refused to apply the law retroactively. The prosecutor says she'll appeal, and next week these hallways will be jammed again as the McMartin case continues through its 10th month. David Dow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Lightning is beautiful, but it can be a killer. Up to now, efforts to get a better handle on lightning, even predicting where and when it might strike, have been little more than a flash in the pan. Correspondent Ed Rabel reports on word today of a new coordinated attempt nationwide to take some of the surprise out of bolts from the blue.
It can be an awesome light show. It is often a source of death and destruction. Lightning kills more people each year than tornadoes or floods or hurricanes. On the average, 100 Americans die annually from lightning. And property damage runs in the millions, as with the recent Florida brush fires. But in the spirit of not just talking about the weather, the government has decided to do something about it, a low-cost system to predict and warn.
You never can say that you can forecast lightning and to the point where you're not crying wolf, but I think that you can minimize the impact and also give people a service which may be one that they can rely on.
Barney and other government scientists have decided to link existing lightning detection centers operated by the National Weather Service and other agencies to brand new tracking stations to provide an efficient nationwide reporting network. By next summer, there'll be lightning forecasts on TV and radio.
Gives them an indication that don't get isolated in a certain location and don't stand by a pole or don't be in the middle of a golf course.
And what about that old chestnut, lightning never strikes twice in the same place, right? Wrong, because in the past 25 years alone, 1.25 billion lightning bolts have struck the United States. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Washington.
In western Colorado today, the U.S. Forest Service wasn't putting out a fire, but starting one on purpose in the Gunnison National Forest. The purpose, to do what nature wasn't doing, providing a natural migration route for the rare bighorn sheep in the area. The fires were lit with a distant relative of napalm, which was used in the jungles of Vietnam.
Paladin presents Martha Ray, comedian denture wearer.
You know, I love to laugh as much as my audience, so I want my dentures sparkling clean. That's why I use Super Strength Polident every day. Look at this stained denture. Now watch Super Strength Polident work. In minutes, the tough stain comes clean, even in between. So listen to the big mouth. Super Strength Polident Green gets tough stains super clean.
The promise of America is opportunities, not guarantees. That challenge was seized by millions of immigrants who came to this country to build new lives and build the nation. Today, I still see enormous opportunities in the hundreds of small to mid-sized companies whose new ideas, new jobs, and new technologies will continue to build America. At First Jersey Securities, we specialize in discovering such emerging growth companies for today's investors with vision. First Jersey Securities, come grow with us.
President Reagan hit the road again today, this time Bloomfield, New Jersey, for another campaign-style photo opportunity trip trying to drum up support for Republican candidates and his own version of federal tax system overhaul. Mr. Reagan denied his tax plan would be a net loss for people in many areas with state and city income taxes, such as New York, just across the river from today's stop. Mr. Reagan said eliminating the federal deduction for state and local taxes would be offset by other benefits of his plan. And he called for putting pressure on Congress to get his brand of tax reform passed as is.
The sharks are circling our tax plan and trying to take a bite. We happen to have a foolproof shark repellent in the will of the American people. But your voice must be heard. Can you help us? Will you help us?
Mr. Reagan also said today he would veto any tax reform bill that contains any tax increases. The Merit Systems Protection Board that looks into civil service law violations today took its toughest action ever under the federal law to protect the rights of whistleblowers. The Merit Systems Protection Board ordered the firing of Charles Sterrett, the head of the Pentagon's Defense Contracting Auditing Agency, and ordered the demotion of 2 others in that agency. The reason? They were found to have hassled one of their own auditors, George Spanton, who turned whistleblower. Also, that they tried to reassign Spanton when one of his audits of defense contractor Pratt & Whitney found serious pricing improprieties. Spanton retired in 1983. In New York City today, there's currently $1 billion worth of building activity going on. The taxing question is this: how do holders of construction jobs earn 6-figure incomes? Chris Kelly has been looking into that.
Construction work is tough. A hard 8-hour day with perhaps some extra overtime pay to sweeten the take-home check. But New York State investigators say a few workers got absurdly sweet paychecks through featherbedding, doing hardly any work or not even being on the job.
That apparently New York City is the only city in the country which has certain kinds of labor officials working on sites who don't appear to perform substantial work.
George Morrison is a target of investigators who say he earned more than $400,000 last year in wages and benefits, claiming he worked 221 24-hour days. But instead of being on the job here, records show Morrison was in places like Acapulco, the Caribbean, or Europe.
I guess the thing that's troubling all of us, Mr. Morrison, we'd like to know how is it that you get paid when you're not on the site?
Because I'm on call 24 hours a day.
So you get paid hourly wages because you're on call 24 hours a day?
Under the collective bargaining agreement, I have operating engineers working around the clock.
The construction industry here is stuck with the deal that in effect allows union-designated supervisors like Morrison to get paid whenever his men work.
I think it's hard to find any citizen in this city or country who would say that's a fair way of compensating somebody for working, for being paid if they're not working.
But the contract says you have to pay him.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot of money. He's making more money than the president.
I think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. A lot of people need work, and he's making all that money. Just spread it out a little.
Officials say the work rules are the price builders have to pay for labor peace in New York City. The state investigation is focusing on at least 4 other 6-figure deals in the hope that exposing the practice will end it. Chris Kelly, CBS News, New York.
Claus von Bulow, cleared earlier this week of charges he tried to murder his wife, is the new hero with the social set and is now making the television rounds. Here is what he had to say about his wife's reaction to his romantic affairs.
There is no infidelity if there's collusion. And tragically, Sonny, in the years after 71, somehow lost interest. But she was an extremely fair and decent human being, so provided I kept it discreet, she had no objection. And I did keep it discreet.
She knew and had no objection that you were having relationships with other women?
That's right. As long as I didn't get into her own back garden. And I think that's, that I did not do. I mean, I didn't have affairs with her friends.
Claus von Bulow was interviewed today for the CBS News broadcast Night Watch.
Now, a new definition of quality and performance. The new Norelco electronic rotor track with the fastest, longest-lasting charge of any leading razor. Inside 3 floating heads is a patented lift and cut shaving system, guaranteed to shave you fast, clean, razor blade close, without a nick or cut or your money back. She'll love a gift from the Norelco ladies line.
Norelco, we put quality first.
Don't be alarmed. You're watching a man at work.
Let's see, I know it's here somewhere. Ah, found it.
I remember we were panicked. Find a home that last day or fly home not knowing where we'd lived. But our Century 21 broker wouldn't give up.
He showed us the last house late that night. And guess what?
perfect and at the right price. How do you find people like that?
All you gotta do is pick up the phone. Put number 1 to work for you. Century 21.
At the Rome conspiracy trial in the papal assassination attempt, Turkish terrorist Mehmet Ali Ağca today did some work for the prosecution and then the defense. He was shown a photo taken at the shooting site 4 years ago and pointed to 2 men he said were his co-conspirators, but he later backed off the claim, saying he wasn't sure. Ağca also testified that the daughter of a Vatican employee was kidnapped 2 years ago by the illegal and right-wing Masonic P2 Lodge in order to secure his own freedom. Following this week's arrival in Ethiopia of the first of 60 tons of relief supplies paid for by a U.S. recording, some of those involved in raising the money saw today where it's going. And as John Blackstone reports, what was seen was shocking and disheartening.
A few of those who made the money-raising hit record, We Are the World, saw today just how cruel the world can be.
If you had to give a prognosis right now, what would you say?
This is basically a doomed kid. Even if he were to live for a while, there's no way that he's going to recuperate. The effects of his malnutrition are permanent.
Harry Belafonte, Marlon Jackson, and some of those behind the scenes in USA for Africa saw the relief camps at Mengele. 65,000 people living in tents or outdoors. 40% of them still badly undernourished. 10 to 20 dying every day. But 8 months ago, 100 or more died here daily.
And I'm ashamed. I am. Because there's something we can do about it, and we waited so long.
On this trip, the group brought its first donation of other badly needed relief supplies, medicine and medical equipment, tents and clothes. The camps at Mengele offered a warning of just how difficult it is to change the world.
It escapes me how anyone could say that this is an improvement. It's very well organized, but you're looking at the sickest people you've seen in a long, long time right here.
Even after a famine relief campaign now 8 months old, it's estimated that only half the 8 million Ethiopians thought to need food are actually getting it. In fact, thousands of tons are stockpiled. There are not enough trucks in Ethiopia to get the food to where it is needed. Mengele is in the center of Tigray province, where there is a long-running civil war. There are other problems of politics and government policy, complications those collecting donations do not like to talk about. Anything negative they fear will discourage donors.
I think we have a responsibility and a commitment, despite what exists, to reach out to fellow human beings, to make a contribution.
Those who recorded We Are the World started with a belief that music can deliver a message. That message, they say, is that no matter what the problems, the world must not forget the hungry. John Blackstone, CBS News, Mengele, Ethiopia.
According to a book published today, 28 states, led by South Carolina, New York, and North Dakota, are deployment or storage sites for U.S. nuclear weapons. The book adds that the U.S. also has nuclear weapons on Guam and in 8 foreign countries: Belgium, Britain, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, West Germany, Turkey, and South Korea. At least 4 East Bloc countries, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, and Poland, have Soviet nuclear weapons.
In the beginning, man's feet walked free, but the road to civilization was paved, so man developed shoes. Soon after that, man developed athlete's foot. Good God. Today, there's Mycotin. Mycotin cures athlete's foot. It's the only athlete's foot medicine you can buy with myconazole, a patented ingredient recommended by specialists to cure athlete's foot. Mycotin in spray, powder, or cream. Mycotin, the end of the road for athlete's foot.
Okay, you guys go long. Lenny, fake it the Pinto, button up at the Subaru, and I'll hit you with a bullet. You got it? You got it. Yeah! Hike. Watch him, watch him! 2 Mississippi. Where you going? Over there.
The new Subaru sedan is so much larger and more luxurious, you probably won't recognize it. But don't let its good looks fool you. It's still inexpensive and built to stay that way.
You know, Connie, this campaign's impressive. Campaign impressions?
No, Ace Best Buys of the month.
Could you make that perfectly clear? Sure. This Gilmore Turret Sprinkler is a June Best Buy and has 5 different spray settings for only $3.33. Tricky. Well, where's the hose? Our 5/8-inch, 80-foot reinforced hose is Best Buy priced at only $8.99. Well, that's just peanuts.
Wind it up on the Ames hose reel. Another Best Buy at only $9.88.
Well, there they go again. Ace is the place with the helpful hardware man.
Even the latest news traces its roots to the past. We're reminded of this by what's almost certainly the weightiest event scheduled for New York this weekend. It apparently originated in the 1st century before Christ, and Bernard Goldberg reports is best seen as a kind of catch-as-catch-can diplomacy.
They send us their cars, their VCRs, and just about everything else. They enter a paper plane flying contest in Seattle last month, and of course they win. They try to set a new world's domino tumbling record, and of course they do. Their success makes them money, not necessarily friends. The Japanese have a big public relations problem in America, and big problems require big solutions. Big? How's this for big? Japan's newest export, sumo wrestlers. The Japanese have just sent America several tons of sumos, a goodwill tour to improve Japan's image in this country, and just possibly to take our minds off the trade deficit.
Sumo, the sport of emperors. Sumo, the art of strength. Sumo, the biggest thing to ever hit New York.
The Japanese know how to sell, but never before have they brought out such heavy artillery. They're doing the sumo talk show circuit.
Do you see yourself getting contacted by Cyndi Lauper to do any music videos?
No, not really.
See you later, folks. And what would an American goodwill tour be without Sumo Disco? That, by the way, is not Mount Fuji. His name is Konishiki. Weight, 484 pounds. An American from Hawaii, imported by the Japanese. The Japanese also know how important it is to meet American leaders. The Secretary of State was wearing pinstripes, the sumos, no stripes. Today, the mountains came to Manhattan. They wrap up their goodwill tour this weekend with Japan's first ever sumo exhibition in America, in New York's Madison Square Garden. It should be a hot time. Sumo in the city. Bernard Goldberg, CBS News, New York.
And that's the CBS Evening News for this Thursday. Dan Rather reporting from New York. Thank you for joining us. Good night.
The dogs and cats here at the Hearts Care Center are wearing flea and tick collars made by Hearts. But they're not all the same kind of collar. Rex and Boots are wearing the Hearts 2-in-1 Plus reflecting collar for nighttime safety and full-time flea and tick protection. And King and Fluff, well, they like the regular Hearts 2-in-1 long-lasting collar. Now it kills fleas and ticks for 5 months, even if it gets wet. With Hearts, you can choose from a whole family of 2-in-1 flea and tick products, all part of Hearts Care. Everything good for your pet.
Move it back! Around here I get lots of heat and headaches. The Anacin kind.
Anacin, 23% more medicine than regular pain relievers.
More medicine! No more headache!
Anacin, more medicine.
The #1 hit.
How fast can Ambisol relieve toothache pain? Before you can say
Ambisol.
Canker sore pain? Before you can say
Ambisol.
Ambisol relieves minor mouth pain on contact. Ambisol, liquid or gel.
When you need it most, you can get extra strength relief from acid indigestion with new extra strength Riopan Plus. In lab tests, ounce for ounce, it neutralizes twice the acid as regular Maalox or Mylanta. It's that strong. When you need it most, you can also get extra strength relief from heartburn with new extra strength Riopan Plus. Ounce for ounce, it neutralizes twice the acid as regular Maalox or Mylanta. It's that strong. New extra strength Riopan Plus.
This is CBS.